Hey there, EB here on our first Anything But Bland weekly update for 2025. Can you believe we're in 2025? Absolutely shocked. 2024 went so fast. The holiday season from Halloween to Christmas was in the blip of an eye. And the older you get, these years just keep rolling faster. It's kind of like the toilet paper roll. The closer you get to the end of the roll, the faster you lose the toilet paper, the faster the roll gets empty. And so it's scary, humbling, but looking forward to a new year. Wish everybody a really good 2025. Looking out the window right now, believe it or not, it's snowing in Columbia, South Carolina. I know the South is getting hit pretty hard in Alabama, where my daughter is in Atlanta, and the North was getting hit. It's just incredibly cold. So let's dive in. We have a lot to talk about today. The California wildfires are just heartbreaking. We see in the hills of California and a lot in the forests and the rural areas, there's the fires every year. But the fact that there were fires mixed with these 40 to 80 mile an hour winds, hurricane type winds, caused the fires to go from the rural area right through into the urban centers. It was a perfect storm. Joe Rogan talked about it about 3 years ago. I listened to a podcast where he moved from California to Texas and said that there was a fire that got really close to his house, and that was enough for him to move. And he said he had a weather guy on, and he said, the perfect storm would be if high winds come with multiple fires, and that's exactly what happened. Um, over 20,000, 30,000 acres were burned. 10 people have died. They believe there's so much more at this point in time. Um, $10 million was cut from the budget by the current mayor, Karen Bass. Now she says for the firemen, this $10 million was mostly administrative. 10,000 structures were burned and over 200,000 people have been evacuated. Paris Hilton's house is burned down. Gary Hall, who's an Olympian swimmer, his house was burned down. It's just completely tragic when you lose every single thing except what's on your body. And there's a lot of criticism about the lack of water supply and the fire hydrants not having pressure, but fire hydrants and the water supply in an urban area is meant for community type of fires where you maybe have one or two structures on fire. The problem is when you have these um, huge blasts of fire and these single embers can travel through the air based on the wind and start multiple fires everywhere. The type of water reservoir, rotor water reserves, are not meant to handle that kind of fire damage where there's hundreds of homes on fire in a single neighborhood. When you think about it, it's usually just a single house or maybe an adjoining structure that's on fire. But when you have 100 homes on fire, that's the problem. These firemen who are so brave are working 16 to 18 hours a day. Um, a couple fires I looked at this morning are still not being contained. The damage is going to take um, 10, 15 years to rebuild. The problem is a lot of these homes don't have homeowners insurance. They've been canceled or they have exclusions for fire. The problem is that these insurance companies, if these houses are rebuilt, are not going to want to insure these homes because of the danger of, the earthquakes, fire, mudslides. You know, when we look at what happens in these catastrophic events of nature in Florida, you're building a house on a beach right in the Gulf or on the East Coast where you're right in Hurricane Alley every single year. We go to New Orleans and they're building houses below sea level, below the levees. And flooding does occur. And in California, you're building houses on these picturesque beaches and sides of the hills, but you don't realize that the barren nature of these mountains and hill areas because of the drought. Um, a fire can start with a spark and they go nonstop and they're difficult to contain. Look, um, Karen Bass is going to have to answer for this. The visual of her being in Ghana earlier this week in Africa while the Los Angeles was burning is just a bad optic. I think it's going to cost her her job. Gavin Newsom as a governor, certainly the buck stops with him, but again, these urban type of fires that are, mowing down areas and burning down banks and schools. You're talking 10,000 homes and commercial establishments at a minimum have been burned to the ground. It's very difficult to have a water supply um, that can contain these fires. Ships have uh, these ballasts on the side that spray out water. And somebody said, well, why don't we put those in homes? The problem is these embers travel through the air and they hit a roof. And then with the wind, the fire starts immediately and burns quickly. And it's very difficult to put down. So what is the answer? The answer is, well, we're going to have to come up with different type of water reserves, water ways to bring in water, ways to bring additional sand in these airplanes that specifically drop sand and other things to contain the fire. Those cost money. Additional firemen, they cost money. How do you get that money? You have to raise taxes. So there's going to be this request for more governmental assistance going forward, but yet at the same time, people are going to reject raising their taxes. And so, there's a lot of people who study urban growth and urban sprawl and how do you deal with these catastrophic events of nature that you can't control: hurricanes, tornadoes, mudslides, rainfall. Um, it's really a tough thing. Fires. So we're going to have to look at it. The next thing is Jimmy Carter. He died this week. He was over 100 years old. Um, One of the longest serving ex presidents who lived almost 50, 60 years, 50 years after he left office. He was a one term president from Plains, Georgia, served in the Navy, was a engineer, really smart guy, peanut farmer. You heard all the things, but he did some extraordinary things as president, even though he was a one-term president. What really killed him was the Iran hostage crisis that went on for over 400 days. It really hurt his reelection chances, and Ronald Reagan capitalized on that. We didn't compete in the 1980 Olympics because of it, and some additional issues with Russia. And so that was a real negative stain on his historical record, but he did some really interesting things. Remember when he was president, we had interest rates that were almost 17%. And we had an oil embargo going on. I don't know, people my age would remember the interest rates being at 17%. So mortgages were 17%. Can you imagine how much your monthly payment would be for car payments and credit cards and a mortgage payment with that kind of interest rate? We've never seen double digit interest rates really in most people's lifetimes. Additionally, with this oil embargo, you had to get gas every other day. I remember when I first got my license in 1978, um, odd number plates would get, if your last number on your license plate was an odd number, you would get it Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. If you were an even number on the last number on your license plate, you would get it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. um, you would be able to get gas. And the lines were, 3, 4 blocks long. It was really crazy. So he also did the Camp David Accords, where he got Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin together, Sadat for Egypt, Menachem Begin for Israel. And they made peace. And that peace has been sustained almost for 50 years between Egypt and Israel, which is amazing. He normalized relations with China. So, that was something that is, historic. And I think his history will judge. He was an amazingly kind and gentle man. I think he failed at being a president because he tried to micromanage the office. Everything that came into the White House, he wanted to read, see, and hear. And you have to be able to delegate as a president. And he was too much invested in it. He did the fireside chats with in a sweater, which was pretty interesting. He was just an incredibly religious man. His post presidency work was almost more important than the work he did as president. Started the Habitat for Humanity, built homes, uh, was traveled the world to go to hot spots and try to calm it down. He was respected by everybody. Even Donald Trump paid him tremendous compliments. All the presidents were together for his funeral. And there's a lot of people who are pissed off at the fact that Obama was next to Trump at the funeral and was yucking it up with him. They were laughing and they were talking, and they said, how could Obama do that when Trump started the whole birther thing in 2012, saying that Obama wasn't born in this country? Look, you know, politics is a bare knuckle sport, but when you're at a funeral and you are part of the presidential club, which is a very small club, um, we need to be civil to each other. So I don't condemn Barack Obama for talking to Donald Trump. You shouldn't isolate him because that is not going to be civil type of behavior at a funeral. So everybody needs to take it down a notch. It's not a big deal. Everybody still can go to their corners after the funeral and throw barbs at each other. But when you're at a funeral, you should be civil. Um, we had on in the state this week, Nautilus Insurance Company that paid 3.8 million of the 4.3 million dollars that went to Gloria Satterfield in the case that I represented the Satterfield estate in the Murdaugh matter. Nautilus Insurance Company sued Alex Murdaugh and Corey Fleming and Corey Fleming's law firm. Alex Murdaugh confessed to judgment right before the trial in the amount of 14.8 million dollars, which is extraordinary. Um, he received 3.6 million of the 4.3 million that was stolen from the Satterfield estate. The fact that he confessed judgment for $14.8 million tells me a couple things. One, he doesn't have lawyers anymore. Dick and Jim aren't willing to do these type of civil cases. The only case they're willing to do is keep appealing the double murder conviction. He had Jim Griffin be his lawyer for many years in this lawsuit where Nautilus was seeking to get their money back. Um, and he tried everything. Alex tried to bring the Satterfields as third party defendants in this lawsuit. He tried to uh, tell the court that Ronnie and Richter and I, my partner, should give up some of our money that we recovered in attorney's fees because we recovered over $9.3 million for the Satterfields in this. Um, in our lawsuits and against multiple sources. $14.8 million tells me that Charles Manson has a better chance of rising from the dead than Nautilus Insurance Company getting a dollar for Alex Murdaugh. I really thought that he was going to want to take like a field trip from prison and represent himself in this case. So the case last week went forward against, and this week against Corey Fleming and his law firm, Moss Coon and Fleming. Corey, as you know, is doing a 40-month sentence in federal prison for pleading guilty in federal court, and he was given 9 years after his 40 months is done in a state court prison. He came in, he was able to dress in a suit. His attorneys tried to defend, and it was a strange verdict. The jury assessed $1.3 million against Corey Fleming when he only received 630,000 from the 4.3 million. But they assessed punitive damages of $50. To assess punitive damages, it has to be a willful violation. Since there was an unfair trade practices claim, after the verdict, Judge Gergel tripled, which means trebled, the actual damage verdict of $1.3 million. So the new verdict against Corey Fleming was $3.9 million that he got socked with in that courtroom this week. But the strange thing was that the jury did not hold his law firm, Moss Coon and Fleming, liable for failure to supervise Corey Fleming's activities. So the chances of Nautilus collecting any money from Corey is zero, from Alex is zero. The only chance was to get to the insurance policy, if any existed left, with Moss, Kuhn, and Fleming. So it really was a loss for Nautilus Insurance Company. It was a Pyrrhic victory on paper, but I don't think it's going to mean anything. Um, right now, as we're doing this weekly update, Donald Trump is being sentenced in the New York state court, New York federal court, excuse me, by Judge Mershon. And in the hush money trial that he was convicted of, he's going to get a sentence probably of no jail time, no fine, and it's going to be a conditional dismissal of any type of punishment. But the fact that he is a convicted felon um, will be throughout history because he is a president-elect. He's about 12, let's see, 10 days from his inauguration. So he's going to walk into the presidency as a convicted felon. Uh, no other person can serve in the White House as a convicted felon. That would be a bar to their employment, except the President of the United States. He appealed this all the way up yesterday to the Supreme Court, remember, where he enjoys 6 conservative judges, 3 that he's appointed. And the Supreme Court did not stay the sentencing of today. What Donald Trump argued was that as a president elect, he should enjoy the same protections of a president from being prosecuted, punished, or whatever. And the Supreme Court said, no, as a president elect, you don't enjoy the same privileges as a president. Additionally, Eileen Cannon this week, who is his judge of absolute flavor, I believe she's going to be appointed on to the Supreme Court if a seat opens up during Trump's next term. She's a district court judge in Fort Pierce, Florida. And as you know, she has ruled in Trump's favor on every single ruling on the confidential documents case that was brought by Jack Smith. She dismissed the charges. She said that uh, the appointment of the special prosecutor, Jack Smith, violated the Special Prosecutors Act. Every single motion to dismiss and suppression of evidence she granted. The 11th Circuit reversed her every single time. Now, the Supreme Court said that Trump is entitled to limited immunity last June, and that is what's kind of caused that case to fall by the wayside. And obviously, him being elected as president, he's going to direct his Justice Department to stop these prosecutions, and that's why Jack Smith dismissed the case and stepped down as special prosecutor. But he was going to release his report. There's a 2-part report that sets forth all the evidence on the confidential documents case. And Eileen Cannon, who had no longer had jurisdiction, ruled that the Justice Department could not release the report, which would show the violations of Trump on these confidential documents, disregarding subpoenas, telling people to lie to the uh, FBI when they came in with their search warrant on what documents were available, had attorneys sign false affidavits. There's a number of pretty damning stuff. She ruled that the Justice Department could not release it. The 11th Circuit, again, stood on her head and said she's completely wrong. She has no jurisdiction. She has no authority, and gave Jack Smith and Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States, the permission to release these reports. So I think by Monday you're going to see these reports, and I think they're going to be pretty damning. Um, I think there may be a move uh, by the 11th Circuit to take any Trump case away from Eileen Cannon at this point. I quite frankly have never seen an appellate court overrule the same judge almost 4 or 5 times in a particular case. Right now, the Supreme Court's going to be hearing issues to ban TikTok. The lower federal court judge said that TikTok should be banned. It's a pretty interesting issue, free speech versus national security, because everybody knows that China owns TikTok and they have ability to track the way we search on TikTok and what we listen to, and it becomes very invasive. And so it's a balancing act with free speech and national security. And we're going to talk about, free speech and how Facebook now, Mark Zuckerberg, is taking away the third party verification of posts. And it's going to be an absolute wild, wild west on every platform because there's going to be no um, fact checking on whether something is true, whether it's from a Democrat or a Republican. And so we're going to have to really do our own research to determine what we're reading and hearing is correct. But I listened to this morning, the arguments regarding TikTok, and there was a true crime investigator who said TikTok is excellent at solving crimes and getting tips from all different areas of the country where you really can't reach people except through their app of TikTok. And they're giving great tips, and many, many crimes have been solved. And he implored the true crime community to talk to your politicians to say, don't ban TikTok, which I found that was pretty easy, pretty interesting, excuse me. Um, Earlier this week, there was a phone call between Donald Trump and Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito. That is a pretty unusual thing to take place. Alito was giving a recommendation for one of his former law clerks um, to take a position within the new Trump administration. Certainly, Supreme Court justices have talked to people in presidential administrations in the past about some of their clerks, but there's never been a direct communication um, between a Supreme Court justice and a presidential elect like Donald Trump, especially a day before there was going to be a hearing on his request to postpone his criminal sentence this morning. So Alita and Thomas seem to really skirt the ethics issues. Judge Roberts, I believe, has lost total control of his court. I believe he failed miserably when he has not put in an ethics act. So that's going to be some interesting things to follow. Um, Joe Biden last week said that he's going to release 11 of the Guantanamo Bay detainees from the 9/11 and other type of terrorist incidents and send them to Oman and Middle East. I think that's a huge mistake. These people have shown that when they go back onto uh, foreign areas, foreign soil, they go right back to the battlefield, even after 5, 10, 15, 20 years of being incarcerated. These are extremely dangerous, ideological uh, individuals. Hey, Adria Leang from Scotland. She's joining from Scotland. So cool. Welcome. I think it's really dangerous to let them out. Um, I don't agree with it. I don't agree with the sentencing that was negotiated to let Sheikh Mohammed and some of the other 9/11 guys get life imprisonment and not execution. I think it's a slap in the face of the families and the victims of 9/11. Uh, but again, that's the prerogative of the president. I think Biden's doing a lot of things to tweak Trump at the end of his administration, a lot of things that I think is going to hurt him historically and his reputation. We'll talk about the commutation of 36 of the 39 people on federal death row. Some of those are cop killers, baby killers. He seemed to have left the Boston bomber, Dylan Roof, and somebody else that was a terrorist. Think it's a bad decision. That was a law of the land. A jury held these people guilty. A judge upheld the death sentence that was given. I I get it that there's a disproportionate amount of minorities that have been executed in our country. I get it that there's a religious based reason that the Catholic Church and others don't believe in the death penalty, and I certainly respect it. But the rule of law is the rule of law. We don't have a religious rule of law guide our society. We have a civil rule of law. So um, that's going to be a stain, I think, on Biden's record. Um, Justin Trudeau resigned. He was in Prime Minister of Canada for the last almost 10, 11 years, was going to run for a third term. Um, and he has resigned because he's extremely unpopular. Canada has high taxation, high inflation, but really Trump trolled him for the longest time when he said that Canada was the 51st American state and that Trudeau was not a prime minister but a governor of the one of the states, the United States. Trump, despite entering into a trade agreement with Mexico and Canada in his first administration, has threatened to tax Canadian goods 25% because the what he claims are illegal immigrants coming across the northern border and fentanyl. And I think he did a pretty good job in getting Trudeau out of office. He wants Wayne Gretzky um, to run for Prime Minister of Canada. I don't think Gretzky will do it, but if Gretzky did, I'm sure he would win, similar to Arnold Schwarzenegger winning the governor of California as an actor, and Donald Trump as a personality winning 2 terms as the president of the United States. So stranger things have happened. Um, Donald Trump is also threatening to buy Greenland, uh, either buy it or take it over by force, being an imperialistic type of encroachment on somebody else's land and country. Canada, I heard 50% of the people want to be part of the United States, which is interesting. He also threatened to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Marjorie Taylor Greene immediately put a bill before Congress where